Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. My name is Dominic Tyer, and I'm pharmaphorum's creative and editorial director. In this instalment, I spoke to Dr. Maria Ines Mitrani, who's Chief Science Officer at the clinical stage biopharmaceutical company Organicell Regenerative Medicine. We looked at the development of regenerative medicine and where Organicell hopes to add to that field. With the company pivoting to try and tackle COVID, we also discussed how that change was made possible and where Organicell's focus will be. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher and Podbean, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. Mari, welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for having me today.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Organicell. But before we get to that part of your journey, can you tell us a bit about your career path to date? What's brought you to where you are now?
Of course. So my name is Dr. Maria Mitrani. I am the Chief Science Officer of Organicell Regenerative Medicine. I am an MD and I have a PhD in neurotherapy. I come from a house where I was born and raised in the clinic. My dad has been practicing regenerative medicine for over 45 years. And since I was a child, I used to see all of these miracles that happen in his clinic. So from a very young age, I've been passionate to understand how can people be impacted with different types of therapies that are not usually offered by regular medicine. I went to study medicine. I am from Ecuador, South America, and I got my degree as a physician, a medical doctor, and then started studying other things. As I said, I have a PhD in neural therapy, and also I studied acupuncture. I was very interested in the anti-aging side of the approach of medicine. So got to meet who is my husband now, and we were running a company that was approaching the anti-aging side. Then we're presented with an opportunity to carry out protocols with autologous stem cells. So autologous stem cells are the stem cells that are located in the patient's own body. And we utilize those cells to treat those patients. And that is how we were both brought into the stem cell side of the world. That happened over 13, 15 years ago. And since then, we have been evolving in the stem cell in more regenerative medicine arena.
And for the benefits of listeners, when you talk about regenerative medicine, what sort of things are you talking about?
Yeah, so regenerative medicine is the branch of medicine that specializes in replacing, engineering, or regenerating human cells, tissues, or organs. But it also optimizes the human's body's natural ability to heal itself. So presenting the body with the correct messaging for it to regenerate itself. We all have that ability. All of our cells have that ability to regenerate. But there's a biological clock that keeps going, and therefore we keep aging. But there are certain things that we can apply as a message to those cells, tissues, or organs that can revert that process of either a pathology after an accident, a scarring, or the inflammatory process itself that is happening in organs just by aging. So that is what this branch of medicine encompasses.
And as you mentioned, Organicell's been up and running for over a decade now. What was its initial focus and how has that evolved over the intervening years?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we stumbled upon stem cells 15 years ago, and our only focus was on working with autologous stem cells that come from the patient's own body. And after understanding the potential of regeneration that these cells provide, we needed to find a better source of these cells. Because, let me just give you a for instance, we had 5 patients with osteoarthritis of the knee, pain in the knee, and they all received the same treatment. Let's say they were all 50 years old, and all of them had different percentage of regeneration. So that launched us into a search for a better type of cell that can always give consistent results to all patients. And that's how we, throughout the years, as you mentioned, it's going to be a decade, we have transitioned from the area of autologous stem cells to allogeneic stem cells that are donated from another human, right? Mm-hmm. So we ended in perinatal derived stem cells. Perinatal tissue or placental tissue is that tissue that is between the mom and the baby. And it's a tissue that doesn't have an identity completely of a mom or the baby, but it's a human tissue. And usually this tissue is being discarded, is considered medical waste. And we found in this tissue the ability of these cells to be so regenerative that can be donated from that human to another human. So we've developed a series of research into understanding what is in this tissue, because this perinatal tissue can be placenta, can be the blood derived from the cord blood, it can be the Wharton's jelly, the amniotic membrane, the chorionic membrane, and the amniotic fluid. So it has taken us all of these years to understand first the tissue, the cells that make this tissue, the regenerative cells that make this tissue, and then understand which is the best aspect that we can stay with so we can have consistent results. So Organicell is committed to research, development, and manufacture of these new biologic medicines or drugs.
And what were the main therapeutic areas, I suppose, prior to the events of last year that the company was focused on?
So we've been focusing in 2 big areas. One is lung injury, and the other one is osteoarthritis or pain related in the joints, right? That has been our big focus for over this decade. And our lung injury preclinical data is what we've advanced faster and strongest before last year and the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And I alluded to the changes of last year. Clearly, for everyone, the big change is the COVID pandemic. But for Organicell as a company, that enabled you to make a bit of a pivot, a bit of a shift towards focusing on COVID-19, didn't it?
Yes, it was really very early on the pandemic where we had a meeting with all of our regulatory team, our scientific team, and we encourage each other to present the application to FDA to study COVID-19 because all of our previous research in lung injury. So we've done a lot of lung injury models and understand that our lead therapeutic drug could potentially help these patients. Little did we know about the virus itself or what it was happening in the body, but we had enough information not to share it with the world. So February we presented. In March, at the end of March, we received our first approval to use the drug in humans to treat the acute respiratory distress syndrome due to COVID.
And are there particular patient groups that you're concentrating on?
So we have 2 approved trials right now on specifically COVID, which are the mild to moderate, in a mild to moderate stage, mm-hmm. and the moderate to severe stage. But nevertheless, we did apply for several emergency INDs, which are just a single patient trial that let us look how the drug acted in different stages. So we've done the early stage of COVID, the mid stage of COVID, ICU patients, and then the long haulers.
I suppose potentially it could be these long haulers or this long COVID, as it's often also referred to that maybe the one that's going to need the biggest contribution from medical science as it presents so many issues for patients for healthcare practitioners to deal with. What sort of progress have you made in against these different forms of COVID so far?
Yeah, so what we have understood this year so far is that the earliest that the drug can be administered to the patient, the better outcomes the patient would have. In terms of the inflammatory response, this type of drug is focused especially in the inflammatory damage that the virus has done, or that the immune system has overreacted to and therefore has damaged the tissues. So the type of drug that we utilize is delivered intravenously, so it does go systemically to all the organs. So that's why we decided to treat those long COVID patients, because this is long COVID patients have a multi-organ damage. Some patients have neurological problems, some patients have cardiac problems left after. Some do have a remaining of lung issues. So it's very interesting to understand first what COVID is and then what COVID has left in the body. And, we've seen young people, young athletes, we've seen older people and people with no comorbidities that never even went to the hospital that developed this kind of long COVID symptoms. So it's been very fascinating to understand how far can a product like this impact two things: the inflammatory cascade, but also the immunomodulatory side of this infection.
So, Mari, what about looking to the future? What sort of milestones are next coming up for Organicell?
Well, we're as I mentioned, we're really focused on the research side, and for all of the years that we have done research, we finally are in the point that we are able to transition our preclinical data into real trials. So starting, and besides COVID, what we were focusing on was our COPD trial that has been approved recently, and we are eager to start. There's, from the approval moment from FDA until the trial starts, there's several steps that we have to take. We are very close to starting that trial. But nevertheless, as I mentioned, osteoarthritis has been one of the biggest things in our agenda as well. So getting close also for approval from FDA on that. And we're really eager to start with our collaborators. Two of those two studies are going to be held by very important organizations that have renowned prestige. So we don't want to stop only with lung injury and osteoarthritis. There's so much in the pipeline that has to keep coming out. And heart problems is one of the things that we will be focusing in the future, as well as skin damage. So that is what the future is holding. More and more trials to see how this drug can impact the quality of life of people.
It certainly sounds like it's going to be keeping you very busy. But Mari, thank you very much for joining me on the pharmaphorum podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Dominic, for having me.
And that brings us to the end of episode 38 of the pharmaphorum podcast and my discussion with Organicell's Mari Mitrani. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, and Podbean, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. And don't forget to visit our website to sign up for daily or weekly email pharmaceutical news and analysis bulletins, and follow us on Twitter, where we are at pharmaphorum.